Hi everyone, in today's video presentation I will demonstrate to you how to change front brake pads on a vehicle safely. So in order to remove your brake pads, we need a few items. The jack from the car, the jack stand for safety, the wheel chocks, the brake pads, and of course we'll need some basic tools to remove the brake pads. So first, we grab our jack from the car and you just simply get it from the back of the trunk. Now that we have located the jack, we have to make sure the vehicle is on a level surface with the vehicle in park and emergency brake on. Now that we're ready to lift the vehicle, we need to know where the lifting points are. And in order to find that out, you use the owner's manual of your vehicle. On this particular vehicle, this is one of the 4 lifting points. Now that we found the lift points, we have to think safety. And in order to do that, we have to chock the wheels and then we'll lift the car up. Jack wheels. So before you jack the car up, you have to loosen the bolts on the wheel before the wheel comes up. So you loosen all the bolts. Now we can jack the car up. So you place the jack at the lifting point. So slowly you jack the car up and we'll see the cars raising. Right? Once the tire's off the floor, you can start your work. Now that the tire's off the floor, we can take our wheel off. Use this, or which most people have, a cordless with a socket on it, and you lift your tire off. Now that we have raised in the vehicle with all the safety measures, we will go ahead and replace our front brake pads. But before we do that, I would like to show you the tools that I mentioned earlier. Here we have the torque wrench with a 19mm socket, a ratchet with a 17mm socket, a filing tool, a flat tip screwdriver, 12mm wrench, a large pliers, C-clamp. Of course we need the brake pads, some anti-seize, and finally we have the brake cleaner to clean up our mess at the end. So now we're going to begin to remove the brake pads, and we'll grab our 12mm wrench like I mentioned. We'll loosen the caliper bolt. In this case, this caliper has 1 bolt that we need to remove. Some cases there might be 2 or 4. So we'll simply remove this caliper bolt here, like this. Put it somewhere so you don't kick it anywhere. And now we're going to remove the caliper by simply sliding it upward and then sliding it outward. And here it is. So the caliper is out. You can either have an axle stand, or in this case I'm using a bungee cord just to hold it up, because we don't want to put any pressure on this line, because that's an important part of the braking system. So now we'll remove our brake pads. So we take our screwdriver and we pry it between the rotors and the pad, and we work it nice and evenly so we get the pads out like this. Now that we get the pads, this one is not hard to get out, so it wasn't seized. But see, the reason why it's seized, it caused the inboard to wear more and then the outboard. So now we grab our 17mm socket and ratchet, and we'll place it on the bolt that houses the caliper bracket, and we'll loosen both of them. So now we take the bolts out and we just take the caliper housing just like that. So once we get the caliper housing off, we need to clean the shims. In this case, this caliper has 2 shims, an upper shim and a lower shim. So what we're going to do is simply remove these shims, and we have to clean the surface underneath on both areas with our filing tool. We simply grab our filing tool and we have to clean the surfaces like I mentioned and get all the rust off, so the pads will move freely inside the caliper, so we won't have the same issue that we had earlier with one side worn out more than the other. So you want to file it, but you don't want to grind down to the metal, okay? You just need to get the rust off. And you do the same to these shims. Okay, once we get these cleaned up, put your shim back on and ready to install on your vehicle. So now we're going to go ahead and put our caliper housing back on the same way we took it out, with the upper and lower bolt, the 17 mil. Now we're going to push the piston in back inside the caliper, and we can use the C-clamp like I mentioned. We can use a C-clamp, or we can use a big pliers, which I'm going to use, and we simply pushes the piston back. The piston goes back and it pushes all the fluid in here back towards the master cylinder. Now that we push the piston all the way back in the caliper, the fluid in the master cylinder, you'll see it went up from previously before we changed the brake pad. So here we have our new brake pad. We want to compare it with our old brake pad. So you grab an old one and you grab a new one and flip it on the back side and make sure you have the right size, right? In this case we do. Now these new brake pads come with some shims in the back, so you want to look at the old one and see exactly how it goes. So in this case, this one goes like that, then on the back end of it, it goes like this, with the other one goes like that. So, and we notice when we pull the old one out, the wear indicator was on the top side, so we're putting this one back right to the top. But before we do that, we'll use some anti-seize, and you loop all four corners. In some cases, you will see some people like to loop inside the caliper. I prefer doing this way, but either way is good. So then you just put your new brake pads in there, and the whole idea is the free movement is what we achieve by cleaning the caliper housing. And next, we lubricate the sliders. We make sure the slider is free, and we install our caliper. Make sure your rubbers fit properly, the boots. The dust boot is clean, and it goes in. Put some lubricating on the caliper bolt, and we're ready to tighten it. Now that we have installed all our parts, we have seen some fingerprints with grease marks on the rotors, so we're going to use our brake cleaner and just spray it off just like that, and they're all gone. The whole idea is to get rid of all the grease and the dirt, because that will cause brake noises. We're going to go ahead and put the wheel on. Now that we got the wheel on, what we want to do is tighten all the nuts as tight as possible before we drop the vehicle on the floor. So you use your 19 mil socket. Now that we safely put the vehicle on the floor, we'll torque the wheel to manufacturer specification. In this case, it's 80 foot-pounds. So we set our torque wrench to 80 foot-pounds and we'll tighten it. We have finished installing our brake pads. One final important step we have to do. We have to go in the car and make sure we pump the brake pedal until it's hard enough. So your first application, when you press the brake pedal, it will go all the way to the floor, Now you just press it a few times until it's get hard enough. I hope with the right tool and the right instruction, with confidence, you will perform your brake job and have fun with it. Thank you.